Now, this series could affect again how you look at an extension for like a Jaylen Duren. This
Hmm.
could this could affect like what like how aggressive you want to be in making trades going into next season, like how you want to shape your roster. So again, like this is where Trajan really gets to see as that pressure really molds and as the fire, really starts to burn, the intensity turns up. He gets to see what these guys are really made of.
What you just said scares the living crap out of me. One, the Dern extension, because I've seen some Pistons fans throw out some insane numbers, which I'm not saying that players shouldn't get paid. I'm all about players getting paid, but some of the numbers that fans have brought up on these podcasts kind of just blow my mind. I'm like, are you sure? Like, let's wait to the playoffs and we can get a better understanding of what possibly Jaylen Duren is and isn't.
Mhm.
Um, and then the Trajan Langdon thing, it's like, I don't want this team to just put all their chips and then it kind of backfires, like I, I I said last week that I would be okay kind of running it back and being an over the cap team. I mean,
Mhm.
am I crazy to kind of think that, or like what's your opinion on like what they should, possibly do? Um, Not even like taking account with this, playoff matchup.
I think that if you're Trajan Langdon and you're the Pistons, I think there's two teams that you look at and as a cautionary tale for how you move forward. It's the Sacramento Kings and it's the Phoenix Suns. On one hand, you have the Phoenix Suns who essentially sacrificed the entirety of their culture that got them to a finals to go get Kevin Durant and essentially took all the assets that they had remaining to go get Bradley Beal. And it's a very talent, like very like high talent, like top heavy roster that has no maneuverability or mobility going forward, and they are the only team that did not participate in the postseason or the draft lottery. So if you want to talk about being an absolute hell, that is where the Phoenix Suns are at. So if you're Trajan, that's the cautionary tale to not be overly aggressive. But then on the other hand, you look at the Sacramento Kings who a couple years ago were the second seed in the Western Conference. They went and made, they went and made like a really like deep playoff run. Everyone was like, man, look how exciting it is to be a Sacramento Kings fan. They have a bright future for years to come. And then they miss out on the Pascal Siakam deal. They miss out on, like all these other like Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges. Like they wanted to go and get and be aggressive and go at around those teams. And they waited too long. And by the time they went and got a DeMar DeRozan, it didn't mean a damn thing. De'Aaron Fox wanted out. Jaden Ivey hit that corner three and essentially cost Mike Brown his job because ownership, essentially got fed up and saw that front office kind of fall apart. So I think if you're the pit, like I think if you're Trajan Langdon, you have to look at some of these situations throughout the league, and that's why it's so damn difficult to be an executive in this league because talk about a tightrope that you have to walk because if you go out and you are overly aggressive this summer and then they underperform, then you probably blew your one chance to go and make a trade around a Cade Cunningham going forward. But if you do nothing over the course of the next couple of years and this group sputters out like we've seen Pistons team do in the past, then you're going to go like, oh, well, why didn't you do anything to go and put something alongside of Cade Cunningham? So that's
Yeah.
why, like, whatever moves that this team makes going forward, that's why they have to be absolutely sure that they're the right decisions. And if anything, I err more on your side of erring on the side of caution and not straying too far from their original plan because they talked about whether or not they were going to go and add via trade at this deadline and be more aggressive and go and take that type of swing. But they talked about how they wanted to let this group play out and see what they do. And listen, I still think this group I think this group deserves to stay as intact as possible and start the season together next year. To me, I think the approach should be let this group play through the trade deadline, see where they're at then, and then by that point, it's probably going to be a completely different landscape. As we've seen, anybody can become available at any given time. So I think patience is nothing but Detroit's friend here, especially when you have a lot of guys that are, like already kind of tied up, or you do have some of those decision is coming up. And as far as Jaylen Duren goes, if he has a rough playoffs, if I'm honest with you, Anthony, I don't really feel bad about the prospect of putting Jaylen Duren in a prove it year and seeing what he gets in restricted free agency. That's one thing that you have to consider is even if the Pistons do say, hey, okay, that's the market, they can match whatever comes back. I don't know if a team's going to look at Jaylen Duren and sign this overly massive contract. You could have perhaps some desperate teams. We've seen small market teams in the past go out and make big swings in restricted free agency, but like if Jaylen Duren doesn't like have a great postseason and we have more questions than answers after how all this plays out, I think the Pistons, quite frankly, like I think if there's any player that could use that type of motivation, I think Jaylen Duren's that type of guy.
Yeah, I, I see both sides of the fence with the fans, and S. Mahoney brings up such a great quote because Trajan said this multiple times during his introductory press conference,
Yep.
saying, "I think he brought up don't want to skip steps," and
Mhm.
that's important. But to some fans' point, it's like we have Cade. He's probably going to make an All NBA team this year. He took that leap that some fans expected him to take, and they're happy that he took that leap. But in another breath, it's like you don't want to waste that opportunity to try to make the team try for the team to get better. I'm
Right.
just kind of nervous of like you mentioned the Kings, which I think is a really good example because like number two in the West, and then things just kind of fell apart with the coach. And like obviously, I don't really know if that'll happen with the Pistons and JB because I feel like a lot of these young guys really love the message and what he stands for. I don't really think a coaching thing would really affect this locker room. I think what would affect this team is putting all your chips on the table. And I'm just going to throw this guy's name out there because I see a lot of Pistons fans still talk about him. And it's like, do they just get crazy and freaky and say, hey, Joe D, what do you want for Zion? Because I keep seeing that flow. I'm sure you've seen it too. Like I've seen Zion, I've seen Demontis Sabonis. Like I've just seen like guys that a lot of Pistons fans are just really zeroing in on of trying to make their team better. And I get it, but at the same time as a fan, like I would just kind of caution like you better be sure like those players that you're trying to trade for can get you from a 44 6 seed up to a top 4 seed and try to compete with the Bostons and the New Yorks and the Clevelands. Like if they can't, then you have hard conversations and you get in a situation where Atlanta is right now. Like
Yep.
Atlanta had such a good season a few years ago. They paid everybody and then they're like, oh shit, we're not as good as we thought we were. And like the way Trae Young kind of crashed out and went out, like there's conversations about trading their franchise player, and I don't want that to happen to the Pistons. I don't want them to have conversations where like, well, we paid everybody, maybe this our franchise player is the problem because I think it's a very slippery slope when you do go after guys and pay guys.
I also think you have to make sure that whatever guy that you're bringing in absolutely unequivocally fits your culture and what you're about. And I just don't know if Zion Williamson's that guy. I mean, I don't
Mm.
know how you can make that justification when he's missed just as much, if not more games throughout his career than he's played. And I think if I made this point with Brendan Ingram, this point rings perhaps even more true with Zion Williamson. If there is anybody in the world that knows whether or not Zion Williamson's worth going out and getting, it is Trajan Langdon. In fact, I think if you're Trajan Langdon, I think you have a pretty damn difficult time looking at a Zion Williamson trade and going, yeah, sign me up for that because your old boss just got fired for trying to continue to build around Zion and keeping on letting that go and keeping on giving that a chance. So I think that's something that you absolutely have to consider. I know Pistons fans would absolutely love like a Devin Booker as well. And that's someone, listen, I'm Grand Rapids native here. Like Devin Booker is one of my favorite players of all time. Would absolutely love to see Devin Booker in a Detroit uniform, but you'd have to be absolutely 100% sure that he would have a long enough of a runway and this team would have enough to contend immediately. And as much as I love Devin Booker, I'm not sure if that's necessarily the case. I don't know if you're getting a much better team than what you got in Phoenix last year. It'd probably have a better record because it'd be out in the Eastern Conference and not having to be in the West. But I just think, I mean, especially when you talk about like how hard of a salary cap this league has, talk about like tying it up very quickly.
Yeah, that new CBA, a lot of these contracts, like I look at a team like Denver. Denver's going to have to make tough decisions,
Yep.
especially with their books. Like, Jamal Murray, Jokic, and Michael Porter Jr. Like, they don't win a championship, like they're probably going to break up that core. But
Mhm.
I'm just so cautious with Pistons fans, and I know me and you were like on the Ingram stuff, like all trade season. We're like, no, no, don't go after a guy that has injury history. And you're right, Trajan knows all those Pelican guys really well. The only Pelican guy that I would actually make a trade for is like Trey Murphy. That's it. Like
Yep.
that's the only one I would actually want. Maybe a Herb Jones if I can't get a Trey Murphy, but like. Um, this hasn't really been an organization that, outside of the Rasheed Wallace trade, really has really gone out and got a quote unquote star. Like they've always kind of got guys that were, cusp all stars and kind of made it work that way.
Yeah. I think another thing, like talking about the Kings Pistons comparison that the Pistons have going for them is that unlike Vivek Ranadive, I think Tom Gores is an owner who legitimately does not want to meddle in the day-to-day operations. I think he legitimately wants to hire the basketball person to make the basketball decisions and to trust them to run the organization because I think he's seen enough just him being kind of at the forefront of making some of those decisions just does not work. Whereas if you hear what's going on in Sacramento, all the tales suggest that all the turmoil and the bad decisions that surrounded the Kings this season had Vivek Ranadive's fingerprints all over them. So I think if you're, I think if you're the Pistons, like the biggest thing that you want to see is just that continual trust in Trajan Langdon and his team to continue to make those decisions. And quite frankly, I don't really have much concern or worry at this point that that's going to change because everything I've heard and seen from Detroit and how they view Trajan Langdon is how enamored and how impressed they've been just with how smart he is, how calculated he is, and like how close to his plan he sticks. So I think that's the big thing is I know obviously during these types of losses, it can be easy to like, start
Mhm.
to get kind of doom and gloom pretty quickly. But I think ultimately, I think the Pistons they wouldn't be in this spot to begin with if they didn't have smart people in the right spots making good decisions that were in the best interest of the franchise.